All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. Simon, would you like to pull up the meeting summary from last time?
Yeah, sure.
And good morning, everyone, by the way.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Eric, I didn't know that CV was your cousin. I was.
Oh, yes. Yep. How do you know CV?
CV and the boys are in the same ski club as my boys.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
Mugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had our end of season party on Friday, and we got to talking, and he was like, "Oh yeah, my cousin's on that commission."
Yeah. Yep.
He's a great guy, great kids too. They're gonna be skiing with each other for a while.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't actually gotten out and slopes with them for a year or so, but yeah, they're pretty good
Yeah,
skiers.
They're wicked fast. They're wicked fast. My kids are more of the in the woods variety, but yeah.
Yeah, me too. Cool. All right. So any public comment today? Sorry, I skipped that on the agenda.
There's no members of the public.
Oh, it's not on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else have any members have any public comments they want to share? All right. Hearing none, we'll skip up to or jump up to the minutes from last time. Any comments on the minutes from May 3rd?
Did we ask that the Glazer plan be put on a future agenda?
It's pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know that we talk about that specifically, but I think that it's kind of an assumption that it will be for a while.
Yeah, it's
Right.
got to go to the planning commission on June the 6th. Is the next stage. So they're meeting again next Thursday, not this Thursday, but next Thursday.
No, we're actually meeting. We're actually meeting tonight at 8:30.
Are you? Okay.
Yes, 8:30 to 10.
Wow,
Well, oh,
Geez.
taking one for the team, Gary.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they said it was the committee approved of it, but I don't remember approving of it.
That's a wow.
Starting and ending your day.
I'm a night owl, but that would be tough for me.
So Gary, did you say 8 o'clock at night?
8:30 to 10.
8:30.
8:30 to 10 is what my information is. Yeah.
Jeez. All right.
Huh,
Well,
is that-
that notwithstanding that pain, Gary, it's always great to get an update from you on what that committee's talking about.
Yeah.
And obviously it was on the agenda a month or so ago, but still a lot to
Yeah.
talk about there.
Yes, we're nearing the end of our piece of it, but there'll still be a lot to go.
All right, thanks.
Good morning.
Sorry, I'm late.
No worries. No worries. Okay, so any comments on the minutes? I've noticed you've
Paragraph.
bulletized each of the minutes now, Simon.
Yeah, just to make it easier for people to reference what they're talking about.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it does. They're perfect this time, though.
Right, good.
The only thing I saw in there, Eric, I saw was one spot where there was, I don't know if somebody brought it up where it said is when it should have said if, I think. There was
Oh.
like one.
Yeah.
and I
What
don't
number
remember
was
the-
that? Right, what
Yeah.
paragraph?
Yeah, I'm not even gonna search for is or if.
Yeah, no, it's not worth it, but
Yeah.
if I am able to find it, Simon, I'll
Yeah,
let you know where there was a transposed word.
okay,
That it did change the meaning a little bit, but it was obvious that it was a mistake.
yeah.
All right. Not hearing any other comments. Happy to take a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
In 1 second, I just realized why the Glazer plan popped into my head was in the discussion of the Mountain View Road review. I think that we were looking at those simulated images in the context of that Glazer plan. I don't know if that made it into the minutes or not, but
Oh, the consideration of whether that would be an important thing to do for
Yeah.
the specific plan.
yeah.
I don't know,
So we
I can't
have
remember. But I think
6.1.4.
I think Gary raised this at the meeting anyway. Okay, I can add that in.
Yeah,
Okay.
6.1.4. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Anything else on the minutes?
Move to approve.
Great.
Oh,
Thank you, David. I heard
Either
Reed
one.
first. Sorry, Terry.
Doesn't matter.
We got Reed in for the
He's-
second.
yeah, he was right on it.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, there we go. Thanks, Simon. All right, significant wildlife habitat area regulations. You have a presentation for this one, Simon, or we?
Well, I think we're just going to launch into the changes that have been made. So I'll send this over to Jens after the meeting. I don't think he's really got many comments. I think he said what he wanted to say at the meeting. But this is just the changes that have been made in response to the Commission's comments last time. So I went through it and changed not a huge amount of things, but I think we can work our way through it and talk about the various changes that have been made. So starting here, we have the, and I've highlighted this in yellow. This is the tier 3 habitat blocks. Can you want to see that?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out if it's just my eyes that are not working this morning, or is that really hard to read on the screen?
Maybe the,
It's better, yeah.
It's
That's
projected
a-
out of focus.
Yeah, right, better one, better two.
There we go. Now I can it's starting to become visible.
Yeah, so,
I think just red on yellow is hard.
yeah.
Mhm.
No,
That's- yeah.
no.
There's also some fuzziness in the room, just I think the screen. I had some thoughts, Eric, about the tier 3. I was thinking about both Jens's reaction to really just kind of, it doesn't matter to him whether it's in or not. He just doesn't want it to distract from tier 1 and tier 2.
Mhm.
That's really, I think, what I got from him. But there's this sort of awareness aspect of just because it currently is in agricultural use doesn't mean that in the future it couldn't be a grassland habitat. But we are not regulating it. So I was almost wondering if either it should be taken out as a tier, if you will, but still left in labeled as what it really is, which is large agricultural fields. Maybe there needs to be a high level bullet that just says, what about large agricultural fields, and say large agricultural fields are not regulated by this bylaw. However, they do have the potential, if managed appropriately, to be habitat for grassland birds. You know, speak with town staff if you're interested in doing that, or just something like that. So basically it's an informational section that explains why large agricultural fields are not included in the tiers, but, and are not regulated, but are still important.
I guess my thought, I was thinking the same thing, is that there was a mention down further that it should be eliminated, but I think it should be kept in, only because Jens actually has a slide about how important these like hedgerows are from agricultural fields. And even though the fields aren't being used as a, wildlife management for those identified animals, even though they're seen in there, that those hedgerows and things are really important. They're almost as important as streams and rivers. So really, the tier 3, it just needs to be recognized that for the animals that we are looking at, which don't include grassland birds, that these are important, but they're not.
They're almost like connectors between the tier 1 and tier 2 blocks.
Yeah, he had a slide that showed, these forest blocks, but then there were these, hedgerows, and that's where the animals were being, especially bobcats, were being tracked, that they would use that to cross.
So anyway, that was my thoughts after processing last meeting, was that I didn't want to see agricultural fields ignored.
Right.
But I did want it to be like really clear that we are not regulating large agricultural fields. We are just mapping them because they have other potential habitat importance relative to the blocks. I know what, I'd be interested if others feel that way too, or have a different idea.
And I would actually like to try to work maybe with some down the road would be BCE, who is doing a lot with like meadowlarks and Savannah sparrows and
Who's VCE?
Vermont Studies for Eco Science. BCE, is that how?
Okay.
Vermont Center for, it's down in.
Vermont Center for Ecosystem Studies.
Yes.
Okay.
So they are doing a lot with grassland birds in general, but that would be nice to be able to partner with them to maybe give information to landowners that do have large blocks of grassland.
So then would we leave this, leave 5.3 and indicate that, and just like add a clause ahead of these that says, well, tier 3 blocks are not regulated, and then start that sentence, or would we indicate elsewhere in the document?
So I think that we are creating this tier 3 habitat block on our own. It's not like, that's not standard, like standard classification, part of a standard classification system anywhere else, as far as I understand it. So I would suggest, you kind of cut out right at the beginning of your comment, Kim, so I didn't quite catch what you were suggesting. I think I heard you say something about making it at a level of 27.5.3, but I could be wrong.
I was just like referring to the text that was already at that bullet point. And I guess like my question is like, do we want to, everywhere that appears, do we want to go through and add a note that like it's unregulated, or do we want to just like remove it from the bulleted, like the numerated lists, and then like add a separate like section somewhere that's like about agricultural fields and hedgerows? I guess I'm wondering, like, how do we want to handle it if we want to like leave in the information, or we don't want it to be like considered as in-depth as the other blocks?
So the way this is written at the moment is we've got the various habitat blocks, which are based off the like historical Williston mapping, divided into 3, and the definitions just identify it at the moment. I think what's quite nice about this is that it's like it's associated with the other tiers, so it's not like it's a whole separate thing. It's something that belongs to a family of other habitat blocks, and then that's just the definitions. However, we then get down to the standards. We talk about the tier 1 habitat, tier 2 habitat, and then perhaps I could have made this clearer, but we have this element that I'm highlighting here, which is sort of an either or. So,
Oh, this is a needed or, okay.
so you say tier 3 habitat blocks should be designed to cluster development and minimize fragmentation.
I do
Or
like that.
we could say something along the lines of this, what are the standards? It's regulated in the same way any piece of land in the ARZD would be regulated.
I
We
sort
don't-
of think we should lead with that statement, like that should be the opening, very clear statement that, like, yeah, like exactly what you just said, Simon, and then we could move into basically like I think they could be combined, but the part that's highlighted should be above the part that's not highlighted. Does anyone else feel differently?
So that should be moved further up in the document.
I don't know, that's just my opinion. I'm afraid people don't I'm afraid people skim, and I want it to be like the first thing that someone reads.
Yeah, so this is the standard, so this is what we apply. So we could keep this element, I think is what you
Yeah.
no
Subject to
specific
regulation.
standards. And we can make it clear that this element, which sort of applies anyway, because most of these agricultural fields are in the ARZD, where you have to cluster development and provide 75% open space anyway, even if it's complete garbage land. You have to do that. And that sort of fits in here. And we can also, to Terry's point about, hedgerows and things like that, we do have the connector standards, and also any development on tier 3 has got to provide landscape buffers, which generally in most cases will be a 50-foot retention of existing vegetation. So I guess those are the two options there. Do we step back from regulating it specifically and say, well, our open space designation is going to give this the protection it needs, along with the landscape buffer requirements, but just highlight that, if someone does want to do something above and beyond that, they can.
I guess I'm thinking it's harder to put it back in later than to take it out. I mean, if you take it out now, it would be harder to put it back in than to have it in now and have that information in there for people to see, to understand how they all connect.
Right. And also, we've gone to the trouble of mapping all these sites, and, these agricultural fields have been in Williston's town plan for probably at least 15 years.
I think part of the problem,
Yeah.
Jens, was I was really, when we were working on it last year, I was concerned about the agricultural fields and and I do see wildlife in fields. I mean, this morning I just saw a turkey, turkeys out in cycles. And then Jens was back, and then David was asking about the field. So I think Jens was just feeling, we need to focus. But I think it is, to me, it's important to have it in there, because Williston was an agricultural community from the beginning, before task corners. So.
Yeah. And I think that David also raised the valid point about making sure that farmers don't read this section and then tank the whole project, because they think it's going to interfere with them farming their land, which I guess he has experience of out west. So I think, I don't know, what do people think? Just Kim seemed to think along the lines of this yellow block. We say we're not regulating you beyond how we would regulate you on just a typical open space development. But if you do want to do breeding bird habitat, get in touch, because we can put you in touch with the
Help
public.
you make that happen, yeah.
Because Jens was saying it's really hard to get like you can't regulate breeding birds because it's so hard to do.
Mhm.
You know, anything can disrupt it. You know, it's a challenge on Catamount and we own that land.
Right.
I like Kim's suggestion of combining that 27,595 with the first portion, at least the first portion there of the yellow tax set. I don't necessarily, now that I see that header that's in the yellow highlighted that says what are the standards for tier 3 habitat blocks. I don't know. It really, if we are going to list it as tier 1, 2, 3 up above in the definitions, I do like this section lining up exactly with it, saying standards for tier 1, 2, 3. But I do think the very first sentence needs to say what that first yellow sentence says. They're subject to the regular regulations under the bylaw for open space, and there's no specific SWHA standard.
Gary?
Oh, I just had a less important comment about the word large in there for agricultural fields. I think we should either eliminate it or somewhere define what large means.
I think
Come on.
for Bob.
No, I mean, it seems unnecessary if you just say they are agriculture fields that provide limited. I don't know if the word large necessarily needs to be there.
Yeah, we can delete that.
But
have a
I do
question.
agree. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Gary, finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say I agree that it's nice to have this highlighted piece in there. I don't know if anywhere we also say that we don't have any authority to regulate them as agricultural fields. Do we say that anywhere?
It's said elsewhere in the bylaw.
Yeah,
Chapter
Okay.
4 says that this bylaw does not control agricultural or forestry that's
Okay.
been done in accordance, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I was gonna largely agree with this point that the highlighted text is a good addition. It definitely alleviates some of the concerns that I expressed in the last meeting. So I think it's a good clarification. It is trying to live in both worlds by saying tier 3 is a newly designated form of land use and subject to these bylaws, but not the SWHA standard. I think that's right. So I understand it, and I think that point about cluster developments and having it be considered for open space. I think those are good inclusions. What I keep going back to is that I like the idea of farmers who are managing agricultural fields to be able to come to the town seeking or other trusts for that matter, seeking conservation easements and having a category of like this that they can then point to. I find that to be particularly I don't know if that's just my feeling or if that is real. But so I would not support taking tier 3 away for that reason, is that I think if it provides any value for a farmer seeking a conservation easement.
Right.
There's also
Like
the bobbling program, which pays the farmer to delay haying. It's usually about $60 an acre. So that compensates them for the loss of hay that they could have harvested. So that's,
Yeah.
I'm also a little bit uncomfortable with just straight out saying that these fields have limited habitat value, because I think as Terry pointed out, I mean, that's where I see much of the wildlife that I see as you drive around. So there, maybe it's less important, maybe it doesn't provide the same value, but there is some value. It's got to be because they
delete the
use
word
them.
limited.
Well, we got to have something in there, but maybe it is because of
Maybe we could say
Or
that.
like, if the
Yeah.
landowner desired, they could implement appropriate management practices to increase or something like that.
I don't know.
Well, it only increases it for the birds, really bears and deer and all the other animals.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the
They
height
could,
of the grass.
they could reforest that area if they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we could change this. They provide less habitat value than tiers 1, 1 and 2.
I don't know. Does anybody else feel like I'm like, sorry to be like nitpicky on this, but is it less or is it just different? Like there are the edges of fields create specific
Bird.
habitat that are not
Yeah.
less, they are just for specific species, right? And the fields themselves are not less, they're just for specific species. And are we gonna say like, ooh, we like certain species more than, like, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable with the valuation of the greater
I
than
am
and less
too.
than. What,
mean-
what, Gary?
I was just saying, I'm uncomfortable with it too. Yeah, I don't know how to change it. I'm still thinking about that.
Provide different habitat value in their current use.
I think that would be very hard to understand 5 years from now.
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
The context of this conversation.
Go ahead, Reed.
So I feel like my ecology knowledge is just really far out of date. So I really am just going on what I heard from Jens over the working sessions in 2020, 2021. He really seemed to be saying it is less. It's hard to accept, but it just is less. We may see wildlife in the fields because visibly it's exposed, but it doesn't mean that it's providing services to them that are equivalent to the other types of habitat, like the riparian zones, like the forest blocks, like the wetlands. It's not necessarily a good food source. It doesn't provide enough cover for them to feel safe in the open. They're mostly just traversing. So,
Well, I think someone who like studies Lepidoptera would be like pretty upset by that
Yeah.
estimation.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's really like, to what does it provide
Yeah.
habitat? And like open fields, like they exist outside of agricultural context. See, for example, like the American plains, right? Like, and they do provide ecological and habitat value to a range of species. And so like, I'm not saying like forests aren't great. Obviously they're like my favorite habitat, right? I've devoted my life to studying them. I just
but
don't like
Claire,
the word limited. That's it.
Yeah.
So is it, are these tiers really focused on those 5 species that were chosen? Or,
I think
or is
from
it
what I
every animal?
understood how Jens did this is that you map a habitat on a landscape scale.
Mhm.
So he was mapping it on the basis of, I think, forest cover and designated sites and wetlands and things like that. You know, a forest cover in a riparian environment is sort of the creme de la creme of habitat because it provides a multitude of places and it's also a connector. And I think his point was you can't do this on a species by species
Right, sure.
scale. It's not feasible.
Yeah. So we're looking at all, but I do think if there was forest, the animal would choose forest. And
That's what he was saying,
Yeah.
basically. Most animals,
Most.
not all. I mean,
Not all.
some need clearings, right? The edge habitat has its own. Sorry, you have your hand up, Gary. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say 2 things. I think perhaps the word reduced habitat value would be appropriate. And then I also think in that following sentences, I'm also a little uncomfortable with just talking about grassland birds. I think you could say if the landowner desired, they could implement appropriate management practices to enhance the habitat value of these lands or something like that. And then because we know if like you said, Simon, you could go back, they could plant it back to forests and it would have a different value than the grassland birds even. So I don't know, that's my feeling.
Thanks, Gary. David?
Going back to Yen's comment on this topic of limited, I heard, tilled agricultural land has you know, like the lowest level. Maybe mode has the next highest level, and then as Kim was saying, you know, native prairie grassland, which is just left fallow, clearly has a higher value. So there's sort of tiers within that tier 3, I guess, and that's what I heard from Jens. Where obviously a tilled cornfield has limited habitat value, but is still agricultural, as this tier 3 is also designated untilled, unmowed grassland under the same category. So I think that's perhaps the distinction that I'm trying to balance
Yeah.
here.
Accurate.
That sounds like a good summarization to me too, David. And I guess the part that I struggle with is that this is Vermont and not Kansas, so we don't have native prairie grassland habitat here. We've manufactured it on our own by clear cutting forests and things over the last 500 years or 400 years. But that's where we're at now. And I guess my suggestion would be to change limited to something like large agricultural fields that provide an alternative habitat option to forested lands in their current use. Because it is, from what I'm hearing from the conversation, it seems like it's a different habitat, maybe not necessarily limited or lesser in value, because we at this point we don't really, I feel like we don't necessarily have the knowledge to know how different that value is, if it's more or less than forested habitat. Reed?
What was the word you just used?
Alternative.
Alternative, different. I like Gary's word the best. I like reduced, and I like reduced associated with the current management. Current, what does it say? In their current use. So I think applying the adjective to the way they're currently being used, rather than a value of the land itself. Because if they stopped, let's say, haying and said, we're going to allow this area to enter succession, it would immediately jump up in value as that process began to take place. So I think I like associating the reduced and make sure that it's clear that in its current use, its habitat value is reduced. And they have options to make changes to how they're using that land that could create great habitat depending on what they do.
That sounds good. That's a.
I like that. Sorry, I opened a can of worms.
Other thoughts
What
on limited versus reduced? Go ahead, Gary. Was that Gary?
Oh, I was just gonna ask what people think about my thought of, don't call out grassland birds, but just say that with appropriate management practices could enhance the habitat value of these. Because it's not just birds, like we let it go back to forests, it's a whole different set of birds and other wildlife.
Right, maybe grassland birds and other species. Something. Not
Sure.
just identify grassland birds, but and other species, which could be snakes, salamanders, but bees, bugs. I mean, really, you could get into a lot of species that are in grassland, that kind of habitat.
So is everybody good with what's in yellow now? After those changes?
Yeah, I'm good. I think that's.
I can't.
Yes.
Should we have the reduced in comparison to what? Comparison to tier 2 and tier 1 and tier 2?
Yeah, so like relative to tier 1 and tier 2, tier 3 habitat blocks provide reduced habitat value, like somehow explain that it's compared to the tier 1, tier 2. Thank you. Would it be helpful for those, I don't know if you can read it, Eric, I can just read it out loud.
Simon, can you just make it a little bigger?
There we go.
That's better.
Ah,
Thank you.
We're
All
older
right.
than you, Simon.
Well, I got it on the screens.
Yeah, it's coming through fine on the computer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, the projector seems like it's out of focus or something, or maybe it's just my eyeballs aren't working yet this
I
morning.
don't think it was the most expensive projector ever purchased.
Yeah.
So for clarity, then, this bylaw refers to the entire town bylaws, and that's why the open space is in it.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Depending on which zoning district they're in, which for agricultural fields is generally going to be the ARZD, they'd be subject to providing some level of open space. So in the ARZD, that's a mandatory 75% in chapter 31.
That might be helpful as a specific reference. Given that this is sort of set up as a little bit of a footnote.
How does that work, Simon, with like, when things get changed, does it then get hard to update all the references, or is it okay to?
I mean, we've got, like, the ship has sailed on that problem.
A lot of references.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to make that any worse.
All right.
Okay, I had one other comment relative to that last thing Simon put in. I wonder if we should say, instead of these bylaws do not require this, I could say these bylaws do not govern tier 3 habitat.
That's good. I like that.
Is that better?
Don't know if we say govern anywhere else.
Yeah,
I can just-
Well, actually, I don't know about that. Because these bylaws do, well, they regulate it as a piece of land.
Right, but not
They
as the
don't
habitat.
specifically regulate that.
yeah.
So would it
designation.
be, instead of these being something general, like these bylaws, would it be a reference to bylaw 27.5 or whatever does not regulate tier 3 habitat?
If I were working in legislation, I would call it like subsection. This subsection does
Yeah,
not
there you go.
specifically regulate habitat use.
Yeah, I
I mean, I'll
mean, we could just say
check
20,
that.
subsection 27.1 does not, or 27, I guess, chapter 27.
Let's see what 5.9, yeah, those are the standards.
And I could just make it, because that's significant wildlife habitat.
Yeah.
I'll word search that subsection point, David. I don't recall us saying that elsewhere, but I can look that up.
Looks
Yeah,
good.
thanks. This addresses my sort of concern. Thanks.
Just for readability, not my focus, but for interpretability, I guess.
You saying that this has turned into a camel, not a horse?
Yeah. No, where was it? Oh, so. All right, so this is because they are agricultural fields that provide reduced habitat. Can we change that to, this is because tier 3 habitat blocks are agricultural fields? I'm trying to reduce the number of theys in here, because I think it's a little hard to interpret, I think. And then, even though I'm adding to the text, and then if the landowner desired, they could implement, could we just say a landowner may implement appropriate management practices?
The if desired part is bothering you.
Yeah, and just, actually, it's the they. But,
Yeah.
I also wondered, is it better to just say, but this is voluntary as the end of the paragraph? And other species in these areas. But this would be voluntary, this is voluntary. I just didn't know if that resolved all of the concerns about referencing.
Or just saying a landowner may implement.
Okay, no, I think we're good, because you put the landowner may implement.
Yeah.
That shows that it's voluntary.
Yeah.
So what about the title of the yellow section? Would we just get rid of that and let it say tier 3 habitat block standards, and then jump into tier 3 habitat blocks are subject to the regulations?
Yeah, I can put that in here. So it follows on nicely.
So that section you have highlighted would disappear and it would go straight to
Yeah.
the first sentence of the yellow.
Yeah.
Is that how everybody else was envisioning this?
Works for me. Are we deleting the part that's the original text that
Just
Simon has
the
highlighted?
first line, right?
Yes,
Like
that would go away. Oh, look at the magic.
Gary, is that a legacy hand or a new hand you have up?
Legacy, sorry.
There you go. It would look like that. Thank you.
All right.
I think we've come a long way.
I think so too. It looks good. The only other hang up is I don't like ending that last sentence with this.
Yeah.
But is not required by WDB 27.5.
Perfect. Thank you.
Never end with a preposition.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I can just run through this through Chat GPT and see how it spits it all out. Yeah.
It'll rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we're leaving in tier 3 and we're just really massaging that language about what the standard is. So,
Okay, let's just quickly just get on to the other things.
There's more.
Well, this is the important stuff
Yeah,
now.
right. This is the 1 and 2.
changing the numbers.
Yeah, there's a lot of number changing going on. So I incorporated, so it's all in one place, the stuff we talked about getting the town to contract
Review.
For the HDA review, just so it's all in one place.
Yep. Perfect.
The planning commission looked at that as part of a package of bylaw amendments last night and were happy with it. So
Oh,
they
awesome.
were able to move that on.
Oh, good.
That was a lot easier than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Then there was the examples aspect. I don't know if you're getting to that next.
So there's the what goes into a habitat disturbance assessment. So the first thing is to include in their assessment an example which species are using that connectivity corridor.
Or likely using, since they don't,
Yeah.
they can't just see them.
And then we can also include, this comes an assessment of how much redesignated habitat is required where we have that parcel that's 95% covered. So this goes to, basically you have to read this entire thing before you can talk about anything. So you may recall we said parcels greater than 95% covered can develop in the tier 1, but they have to redesignate an area.
Can you go back up to 27.5.8.4 habitat assessment?
Yeah.
Right there. Your new text at the bottom and habitat assessment?
Yeah.
Nope. Back up
Second bullet point in that
Right.
section, yeah.
there. And is so
No,
which
and
species
if
use it?
so.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another
Back to
spot.
where we
yeah,
started with read this morning.
Yeah,
So the purpose of that, which I haven't really finished off in this draft, is to maybe we include a recommendation where we're looking at a connectivity corridor. And maybe they can include a recommendation about how wide that corridor should be. Because I don't know.
Sorry, this is
Yeah.
the person doing the assessment
Right.
would recommend it.
Yeah,
Yeah, based on the type of species they anticipate, how wide should that corridor be? I like that because it really is site specific. Each
And species
proposal,
specific,
depending
yeah.
on what is on the other ends of those connectors, how long the connector is, all of that, I think somebody who is a wildlife biologist should be making that recommendation.
yeah. So the next thing I did is I removed, we had that leftover wording in the standards, which was basically it was from the previous iteration, which just basically said when you're in the SWHA, you should minimize fragmentation. So you probably can't read that in the room. There was this element here.
The greatest extent possible, yeah, taking out all the ambiguity.
Oh, right.
So that was a catch-all standard for the previous version of the SWHA. And I think where we landed on reflection was we now have specific standards for each type of SWHA. So we don't really need that vague general standard.
Okay.
We have talk about that.
The right of way issue is in 5.5.11.
Yeah, so I should probably expand that to include. So this was the point about the connectors are basically the crossings are essentially just small rectangles shown on the road, and we want to expand that to cover any area adjoining it for the tier 1 or tier 2 standard.
Sure.
It is snowing out there.
Yeah, it's not good. Oh, yeah. May's, what, 17?
Yeah. Wow.
And then we talked about the tier 1 habitat standard. Parcels greater than 95% covered. Providing examples of how this could be achieved. So you've got to configure your development to minimize fragmentation. So you can got to cluster your lots, develop close to the road or existing buildings, minimizing the length of driveways, maintaining contiguous areas of habitat.
Is that where you were gonna use a?
I just got
Kind of-
confused. That's the next part. So this is 75 to 95% covered. This is if you should try and place your development outside any SWHA, but if you don't, you need to redesignate an area and replant it to be functioning as wildlife habitat within 5 years. And this is where we say the HDA has got to recommend how much should be provided with a minimum of an area equal to that which is developed.
Is there gonna be any challenge with, like, are we gonna get HGAs back that don't realize that it is constrained 75 to 95% and that they need to recommend how much to redesignate? Or do you think it's gonna be covered by a conversation between you and the provider?
The way we left it at the moment, the way we left it is that they do their HDA after pre-app.
So they'll already be in the
So they
staff
will know,
notes.
and staff notes say you are 75% to 95% covered, so we can deal with it then.
Okay, so a recommendation would be
Yeah.
at the next stage, you're gonna need to have an HDA and it's going to have to address,
Yeah,
okay. We're good there.
I just had a brief comment. Do you think it's obvious that that restoration is permanent? Or do we need to put something like that in there? I can just see people doing it and then saying, oh, I guess now it's been after 5 years, I'm gonna start mowing this again or cut some trees down. I don't know.
I think it certainly would not hurt to be clear about that.
I mean, we could put that it's got to be shown on the site plan at final plans to become wildlife habitat area. Because obviously we can't update the map every time someone does a subdivision. And we could include that on the final plans, and that way if someone does come in asking for a permit to put a shed or something out there.
It could say restored SWHA,
Yeah.
basically.
Mm.
Yeah, I do like that, showing it on the map at the end of their project.
Gary,
I
are
guess
you
I'm
wanting
more-
the text to say be something like be able to function permanently as wildlife habitat and have this status reached within 5 years, or like?
Well, I'm a little bit leery about the 5-year designation, but you can leave that in if you want, because I don't know how you'd measure that, but I'm more concerned with people doing it and then even without needing a permit for a barn or something, they just, over the years, as we see a lot, particularly in condo associations, people start mowing into the area and start reclaiming it in the future. But maybe that's a problem with the whole system in general. I don't think anywhere else do we use the word permanent in our tier 1 efforts or anything like that.
And maybe we could do it like we do with wetlands, say you've got to put some boulders out there.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I'm just a little concerned that it'll revert back to
I think,
other uses.
Gary, I think you have a good point. I think it certainly wouldn't hurt to be clear that this is intended to be a permanent fix on the landscape.
Maybe just the addition of the word permanent, like Kim was suggesting.
I think I'd rather be clear that it needs to be on final plans. That's how I would do it. I think that's, everyone knows where they stand with that, and it's something that people are accustomed to doing.
To have it on the final development plans.
Right, so when it comes to us, we're gonna say, okay, now it needs to be
Yeah, it must be shown
delineated
as,
with boulders or
restored.
signage.
it must be shown as restored SWHA on the
I
final
think it
plan.
just, because anytime anyone comes in and says, I want to do that, something, we have to go and get the final plans and check them.
Right,
It's on
but
the
if it's in the bylaw, so if it's in the final plans but not in the bylaw, then someone could say, well, why does it need to be permanent? If we ask them to include it as permanent in the.
Yeah, I mean, we can
final
make
plans.
both changes and say permanent, and is that what you're getting at?
Well, I guess my point is, if it's not explicit in the bylaw, then someone could come along and say, well,
We did restore it, but then it doesn't say
Why-
we have to keep it that way.
if we ask them if it's not explicit in the bylaw, but we ask them to make it permanent in the final plans, someone could say, well, they could argue against it, like, why does it need to be permanent?
Okay, we'll just
But if
put
it's-
permanent in here.
Right, so if it's in the bylaw, then it's a lot harder to argue against.
Yeah.
Right,
And it can't hurt.
and then it'd be both,
Yeah.
in theory, it'd be in both places, in the bylaw and then reinforced in the final plans.
So somewhere after that, within the 5 years and be permanent.
Yeah, I'll just copy the text we have elsewhere and put that in.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat related to this point that Gary's making, but if someone wanted to have an existing piece of property that's in a tier 1 habitat, let's say they wanted to take a couple trees down to improve their view shed from the kitchen window. I don't see anything in this bylaw that would prevent them from doing that, right?
And be clearing under a certain acre.
Yeah, so your anything larger than a quarter of an acre clearance needs a permit. You're not supposed to clear outside of your designated building envelope if you have one, which older properties don't. But it is hard to prevent people from taking down 1 or 2 trees to improve their view.
Yeah, we had a case, I guess, come up, I don't know, a couple years ago, maybe, with one of the neighborhoods along North Williston Road. The tree line was very close to many of the units in that neighborhood, and some of the trees were dying, and then they had to come in and remove them, and so there's a whole conversation we had to have with the homeowners association about how to go about doing that and justifying it and so forth. And I think that's just a kind of one of those gray areas we need to be aware of. Is, you know, if somebody's got a few trees, like at my house, I have a couple of large maples that are dying and on my property and will land on my house or could potentially land on my house. I need to be able to remove those without going to the town for a permit.
Right. That makes a good deal of sense. And so I guess the point that the larger point that I guess and Gary, I completely agree with it, is that if you are developing an area that is requiring this amount of clearing and you have to replant it, it's really that future permitting, future articles within this subsection will sort of be that reforested or replanted area will then be treated as tier 1 habitat sort of going forward under the permitting process. And that this is, you know, so that you want that newly replanted area to sort of be redesignated under these bylaws, I guess is my larger point. And then that way you don't have to get into like the very specific land uses like that sort of one or two tree reductions.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, that does to me. Good idea, Dave.
I had a question about what was just above that. Was it in .12.1? Simon, the thing about providing examples, is there any other example in the bylaws where any other location where we include images or drawings or sketches, or is it, would it be in an appendix, or have you not thought through how to?
So I think the only place I can think of off the top of my head is bike parking. That does have some images.
Illustration or something?
Yeah, I don't think it's in anywhere else.
How are you thinking of showing examples of how to deal with 95?
Well, I was just happy with the descriptive text.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I don't.
Okay.
And that's been
I think that's
on the books, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Ever,
Yeah.
yeah, for
All
this
right.
last time.
All right, what else?
I think that was it for this.
Years of work in a few paragraphs.
Yeah. So this will go to.
Well,
some-
first do we have to approve it, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to approve it at this stage simply because I think we need to adopt the maps as part of the town plan. I wanted to get it to a stage where everyone was happy with it, and then it's ready to go after we bring the updated maps into the new town plan, and then we've got something to reference it to.
And was some committee gonna look at this? Some acronym CW something?
Yeah, I can get, I think
Oh, yeah.
all the guys here have reviewed it. I think I'll get them to review the final version as well.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about the Chittenden County Regional Planning
Maybe,
Commission,
yeah, that might,
CRPC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
lawyers don't have to look over this.
The
Town
lawyers,
lawyers, yeah.
the lawyers would.
Lawyers
look
will
over
look
it,
over it,
yeah.
okay.
They look over all the regulations, what they
Yeah.
adopted.
Did we get any input on enforceability or effectiveness, what the regional planning thinks about it?
As a general rule, we don't ask them about our bylaws. They've got a lot to do.
Yeah.
And
Got it.
they're understaffed at the moment.
Okay.
I think, it's been through a good process here. And we've, no one knows our bylaws better than the staff here.
Yep. I'm good with that.
Okay.
Thank you for all that work, Simon.
Yes, thank you. That was a lot.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And compared to-
That's just,
Couple of
that's
years.
one chapter.
Yeah.
Well,
It's chapter 27.
it does.
I also just want to say that like I think it's really progressive.
Yeah.
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 Right, there's no other towns that are doing this.
We have to keep in mind how many times we've been so frustrated with the HGA process and the fact that it doesn't really enable us to have a good assessment. And then even if we have a good assessment, we felt like we couldn't be as robust in our recommendations to the development review board. And now we will actually have the language that we want to reference will be in there. So it's a huge deal.
And you said no development's ever been denied, so, or challenged.
Due to HGA, due to
HGA,
HGA, yeah, it's just been like, oh, yeah, minimal impacts.
Right,
Here it goes.
pretty good.
That's a really important perspective. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have other business.
Yep.
Green up day.
Yeah.
Seemed like it went well from my
Yeah,
hour.
so I
hour
think,
there.
I think it went pretty well. We had quite a lot of interest at the conservation table. A lot of people taking trail maps and looking at where the trails are in Williston. We also engaged with some people on the ERF. I don't know, did you guys distributed quite a few no mow May signs?
A lot.
Um,
Seemed like people were just coming right to that.
Yeah, that seemed to be the main draw, people coming to us to get those, and then we were able to engage with them about some other initiatives we were doing.
I've seen a couple up in my neighborhood. Have people seen them up around?
Yeah,
I don't know if I've actually seen any signs, but I have definitely seen lawns with tall grass.
Yeah.
Ben is like chomping at the bit to mow our lawn. And I said, if I can't convince you to do this for 1 month, how can I convince an entire community?
So one good thing that I think there seemed to be quite a lot of debate on Front Porch Forum about no mow May as well, which was good.
Was there? I missed all that.
oh, you did. And it was good to point out that you don't have to do your whole lawn.
Yeah.
You could just do a section. So
That's
that
what I'm
was-
doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got about half my lawn mowed where the dogs and the kids play. But
Right.
you know, where they kind of the marshy stuff, the stuff no one really hangs out in, that's the stuff that I'm letting go fallow.
Yeah. So I did have a look at the Bitly account. So we had 30 people use the shortened URL we provided, which actually went out on a few emails, and I think it was on Front Porch Forum. And we had 15 scans of the QR code for people using the signs. Just those two stats. We probably think about, well, we don't really think about it now, but it's a good lesson for next year's event that if we've got something that draws people in, it helps engage with people.
Yeah.
So we can think about that next year. There was lots of food. We had a huge quantity of coffee. It was good.
The observers,
Speaking of which, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go fill my coffee mug.
the observers giveaway thing was good.
Well, it was good for you. Eric.
Yeah,
It wasn't
good
so
for
good
me.
for your son.
Yeah.
What was
Because
the giveaway?
my son, the observer had a, whatever it was, flowers or something, you pick a flower off a wall and you win the prize that was on the back of the flower. And my son won a Williston Observer notepad. I won a $50 gift card to Lenny's.
Ah,
That's
I
great.
got $25 to Felina's.
Yes, that's pretty good,
Yeah,
too.
That was good too.
Nice.
Yeah, it was
So that'll
good.
buy
I
you a
mean,
boot, right, Eric?
Yes, or
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
extra pair of laces
Quarter
or
of a
something.
boot.
Quarter of a boot, yeah. Shoelace.
But I thought there was a lot of, the Red Cross was there, Emily or the town with all the
Mhm.
information about this stuff about
Yeah.
2025 or 50. So yeah, I thought it was well attended. People.
Did it speed up? Did it pick up toward the end? The beginning, the very beginning was slow.
Yeah, it was a bit, because last year, 8 AM to sort of about 9:30 was by far the busiest period. This year, I don't think anyone showed up until about 9:15.
Yeah.
So just, I don't know why it was completely different, but it just was.
Perhaps having the concert at the end and
Yeah.
stuff meant people wanted to be there later so they could stay for the
Yeah,
concert. I don't know.
And the town looks great. I mean, people were picking up, the bags were out the week before and yeah, the town came right away. I think they came Monday, pretty much cleaned it all up.
How did the app work, Simon? Did a lot of people use it, or did they just sort of pick their own routes?
I think a lot of people used it, but some of the feedback we got was that people didn't enjoy using it. I think they found it quite difficult to use the pin
Yeah.
drop.
I couldn't do it.
I couldn't figure out the pin drop either, and yeah, same. I mean, I could, but I don't think the town actually picked up where I dropped the pin, because we ended up there's some open space in our neighborhood. That's where I dropped the pin. Nobody came to pick it up, so we just put it in our own garbage.
Right, I mean, we should probably make it clear that the town only goes to town roads is where the guys go to pick stuff up. So, yeah.
Catamount Community Forest update.
Yeah, so Terry and I last Thursday, I don't know if you know, but back in February, the Catamount Forest Committee recommended a firm to conduct the forestry project with Ethan. They unfortunately were unable to do it, so we've chosen a new firm called LaFoes. We chose them on Thursday to do the work. They were selected on the basis of their experience.
It's to do the tree removal and
Yeah, so
Forest
25
marshal.
acres in the north west corner is going to be selectively logged as part of a climate change study that UVM are partnering with various other bodies to conduct and figure out how forests are going to change in climate change and how we can make them more resilient. So the foes are going to go up there for us and take down the trees. They were selected based on their experience. One, they've worked at the Von Trapp Family Lodge, they've worked at Craftsbury, they've worked at Katie Lane. So I think that gave everyone a lot of comfort that they're going to be able to protect the trails. And also they are by far the fastest. They claim that they can do it in a week and a half, which I don't think anyone really believes, but
Might be
that
better
was a
to
lot
take a little
faster,
longer.
than the other crew.
Great.
So that's going to go ahead, and I think Ethan's doing more outreach. I think he did a bike ride on forestry management on Saturday, which I think Kim might have attended if she's back from making her coffee, so hopefully that went well.
And he'll do a lot. So
Yeah.
he has a link tree thing to just Catamount. So you can go on his YouTube or whatever. He has a list of all these things to do with the forestry management plan coming up, so. And then just, are you done with the LaFoe?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just had so this, Ethan will be there too. On June 3rd, we're gonna be having, Mark Labar from Audubon is gonna be coming back to do a bird banding for the golden wing warbler habitat. And Green Mountain Audubon Society will be having a bird walk from 7 to 9-ish, or no, 8 to 10. Mark will be there from like 7 to 10. And so anyway, so this, so that's great. They did this last year, I'm pretty sure, but that kind of opened up this kind of can of worms about special events. And it's all in the, the management plan, forest management plan, that we all approved and everything, but that every group that does an event at Catamount needs to have an insurance policy. And not only Catamount, Outdoor Family Center, which, you know, is a good idea because of their activities, but also any group, which is like Green Mountain Audubon Society, Audubon Vermont, Master Naturalists, which I really don't think they carry $1 million policy. Any speakers that we would want to come there, UVM students, I guess, kind of affected. So we, thank goodness, I had set up the, you know, bird walk and the bird banding with them. I asked them to come. So the town is going to have them under their insurance. So, because I'm also going to do a bird walk with the library. So that kind of covers under that umbrella. But it is in the management plan all through there that everyone has to have $1 million policy, which is tricky.
Prohibitive.
It's very prohibitive. And, you know, Green Mountain Audubon Society was saying, you know, let us know because we're going to have to, we don't have that kind of coverage. So Simon did get a hold of the town and they're able to cover that as an umbrella rate. That's gonna work.
in this case, because you set it up.
Right, I set it up
could be
as a
town
committee
event,
member.
But I think we just want to make the point that that's not like a get around for people. So like this is genuinely
Yes.
something that you set up,
Right.
which means it can be a town event, but
But, yeah. it has to be
So-
assessed
yeah.
Yeah, I would like
long-term.
to find out what other towns do, because I know the Heinsberg Town Forest has groups there, the Cambridge Town Forest has groups there, Andrews Forest has groups all the time. Are they requiring that $1 million coverage? I don't know. So that, Simon's, that you were saying that the town is looking into maybe.
well, if we updated the management plan, I mean, it gets quite technical, but I'm still surprised that Green Mountain Audubon don't have insurance. That just doesn't sound right to me.
Right, the society, it's a small
yeah.
nonprofit.
I would think they could get it through the larger Audubon.
Yeah,
Right, which Mark Labar did get, right?
Yeah.
He was surprised that they were. They
but
have.
it's a slightly wider issue in that this isn't a Catamount specific policy. If someone wants to book the rec zone with the rec department,
Same thing.
they have to do it. If
Okay,
someone wants to hire out the
The
brick
people,
church,
the people that book the rec zone have to have it.
yeah, if they want to have an event there.
right, okay.
If
So if I want
want
to like have a birthday party there, I have to get insurance, $1 million insurance.
I don't know what the specifics are for the
Yeah,
rec
Or
zone.
qualify
that
as an
could be
event.
but if it's an
prohibited,
event, yeah.
I mean, I know that like in Charlotte, the senior center, you have to kind of put your house on the, you know, put it, you know, say that I'm a resident and that you have coverage from your collateral, right, yeah.
Yeah, I
collateral,
think most,
I
think
guess.
most-
Do you have to hand your keys in too? To,
Maybe.
the,
But-
the room looks good, I'll take my keys back.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we should look at this and say, so the Outdoor Family Center is negotiating a new lease and it's coming October. And the town, the committee, the Forest Committee hasn't been part of that conversation, but so this just came up because I had set up this birding event. So I don't know, is that something we should make an amendment for? I mean, I'd like to find out what other towns are doing.
I'll
And
just say that like I am married to somebody that promotes an event at Catamount, and I also have a child that participates in Bell Coke League, and there was an attempt to have a Bell Coke race at Catamount, like a kids Nordic ski race, and the permitting was like the thing that made that not happen.
Not happen, right? So
And
I
the
think it's
permitting for
just-
like Ben to have a bike race there is fairly cumbersome. Like he has, his race is in October and he's like already submitted that stuff.
Wow.
So just like, it is like, I think it's good that it exists, and also it's a big hurdle for people.
right,
Like
I
it's
think
impossible to
it's-
have a last minute Nordic kids race, or like there's no snow anywhere but Catamount and we need to move the race so that the kids can Nordic race, and that actually can't happen.
Unless the outdoor center sponsors it, right? So if the-
these are two different issues.
Okay. so
Um,
separate.
There's the temporary event permitting process, which the Outdoor Family Centre have wanted to change for a significant period of time. and have been working with us and town management to change it. Where we're getting to is it is going to be a lot easier for people to hold events there. So we're basically just bumping up the threshold where people need to tell us and agree with us, the town, to something much bigger than it is presently. So that should cover things like the Bill Cock race or bird walks or someone doing a bike ride at short notice. So it should cover all that stuff. It means they don't have to come to the town to ask whether one needs a permit. And the reason we're able to do that is that we have like a robust agreement with the Catamount Outdoor Family Centre that they will protect our interests as the town, and make sure that they're not, holding events that shouldn't be held, and those sorts of things. The insurance issue is a separate issue. They're linked, but it's something that's in the management plan, so we would need to address that as part of the management plan.
Try to do an amendment to the management plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think should that be done before the license with the outdoor center
No.
is? Okay, so it's totally separate.
I'm not.
It can be dealt with
Yeah.
totally separate. Good. Okay, so I just think we need to look at that and I guess maybe address that, because I think it's limiting for folks to use the town forest as a group, not individually, right? Not people that are just over there walking or, say, hey, let's get together and go for a walk. That's not a problem as a group. But if, like LL Bean years ago did a walk over there, I don't know what they did, but they were there. I don't know if they had some insurance or, what the rules were back then.
Well, the rules are probably the same.
It might have been before,
Yeah.
I think it was before the town owned it. So it was
Right.
Jim and Lucy, so I'm not sure how that transferred.
Yeah.
But anyway, but then the other things over at Catamount, Forest Man, there's the nest watch thing is going on. There's bluebirds nesting and tree swallows. The bobolink field, I think, got mowed Monday.
That's what he told me.
He
It
told
doesn't
me.
always mean that's what happened.
And that was the last
Yeah.
day he could have mowed, which is fine, I guess.
No, he can mow up until
Oh, the 20th?
Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday, okay. But he said, so that's fine. Someone saw 10 male bobolinks over there the other day, so
Wow,
that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Because last year there was a nest failure.
yeah.
And we've been doing a series of informational signs. Reed, who's on the committee, has kind of taken over that job as, designing these signs. He's done one for wood ducks. He's working on a bobolink one, the nest watch, and a vernal pool. And he's next going to be working on a geology one.
Oh, cool.
They're fun, and Ethan has a lot of his signage up for the forest management plan, so.
Ethan did a guided tour on a mountain bike, Ethan on a mountain bike in fall forestry.
How'd that go?
It was like, I was like, I have to take photos of this at Catamount's like seasonal launch, and Catamount's executive director went on the ride. So I thought that was really good to like, for him to just get, I don't know how much of, I know he and Ethan talk a lot, but I don't know if he had heard Ethan's full like ecological forestry spiel in all its glory before.
Was Ethan wearing his steel toe boots?
Yes. Yeah, I was like, at the end of it, I was like, I feel like we got to get you in full like mountain bike apparel so that there's like an in-group thing, in-group, out-group, like trust thing happening where people are like, oh, you're a mountain biker, so I get what you're saying.
Did he have like a bright orange Husqvarna bike helmet?
No, but he was wearing like his vest. I was like, oh, are we also timber cruising today? Like, definitely. So
It's really hard
thought
to
it
ride
was
a bike
pretty
in
cool
chaps.
event.
And actually, so he said, he told us at the meeting, he said, oh no, this is the way I've always gone mountain biking.
Really?
Just like a pair of cut off jeans and, regular t-shirt. And yeah, so that's good. I'm glad that was well attended. And so Outdoor Center also sponsored a bird walk on the Friday before, this past Friday. And it was great. Sean Beckett was the leader, and there were 17 people there from Montpelier and from around here. And we saw 52 species of birds in 2 hours. It was pretty
How many,
incredible.
250?
No, 52.
Oh, 52.
Sorry, 52. There's not
That's
that
still a
many.
lot.
Yeah.
52 is still a lot.
But that's a lot, yeah, and we couldn't get out of the parking lot, really, it was just amazing, the birds were just everywhere.
I saw you guys out there. I was out for my Friday morning trail run, and
Oh,
the,
yeah,
the birds were alive and bountiful that morning for sure. I saw a ton of salamanders that day too. It was
Yeah.
kind of like I had to slow down my running. It was like, oh, salamanders everywhere. Like on
It's an agility session.
yeah, on like Lookout Hill, there was just it was amazing. It was awesome.
Cool. Great, and I think the outdoor center is pretty full, right? Didn't they say their season with camps, everything's looking good, they have a lot of employees, 30 employees?
Yeah, I think they said 30 seasonal staff that they train.
They
on.
doubled the camp offerings this year.
Um,
And so then they hired more staff to accommodate
Okay.
that. And there, for people who have little kids, there are still like a couple unfilled. The camps are at like 80% capacity because of the doubling.
Hmm.
So there's my plug for like, if you want your kid to be outside at Catamount this summer, there's still time.
Yeah. And John's been doing, fungi walks and night sky.
Telescope building,
Telescope
yeah.
building. Yeah, so he's really, I think, expanded a lot of the offerings there, and
nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
so, I mean, they all have, they're all working as a group.
Great.
Where are the signs explaining the the markings on the tree? I didn't slow down long enough to look for them.
They're there, it's out
there's-
on Sandman's.
Yeah, there's on the back of the barn in the parking lot, Ethan's
Oh,
put
right.
up a
It's true.
guide that explains what the signs are, and then you'll see them in various locations as you run through that north-west quadrant of the forest. I don't know where they are exactly, they just pop up every now and then.
I'll take a look.
Some of them might not survive the winter though.
Yeah, but that's true, they are on the side of the barn, if you look
Yeah.
where that it's like a kiosk, a big kiosk.
Sure.
I did
All right.
see people who had like stopped and gotten off their bike and were reading them the other day.
Good.
Nice. You
Yeah.
gotta get a picture of that and send it to Ethan so that he can
Yeah.
smile a little bit.
He actually was there, so he
Oh,
got
yeah.
to see it also, but like it would imagine me just like creeping through the woods taking a photo of people reading signs.
It'd be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
All right, great to hear all that stuff's happening at Catamount. So future meeting topics.
Also, just to update you that
More, okay.
the select board approved the trapping policy last night that the commission worked on.
Mhm.
So that's been adopted.
Was there any public comment on it?
Yeah, so Jay Petrillo spoke and just advocated that people who do trap shouldn't be negatively judged because it is a necessary thing to do. And Peggy Larson spoke about her experiences as a veterinarian treating trapped animals.
Okay.
And they've been pretty much
They've
at
been
each
the
one
other
of
ones,
those,
yeah.
yeah, so they've spoken before, so.
I
Great.
apologize, I could have one more question
Sure.
for the other, and that is Quiet Connector. Is there any update? And I think it's on the minutes that it was happening.
Yeah, so
now.
they're starting, I think they're starting today, just
Okay.
on the first section where you come across and you go up the hill and then down.
Instead, it's gonna go.
They're going to skirt around that, so I think they're talking about just clearing the trail of vegetation and bench cutting it through there to get that first element done today.
All right, great. Sorry, one more question, Eric.
Any other updates or?
I'd like to look at the upcoming meeting topics.
All right, all right, future meeting topics. What would we like to discuss in the next couple of meetings?
So we've got, we'll talk about the Smoker Trail in 3 weeks' time.
Okay,
Approve that following some public
3 weeks time also being our next meeting.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a
Yeah.
5-week month.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so get a break.
So we get an extra week. So that's something we do need to talk about. I said I was going to review the regulations for Essex and Jericho on visual impact assessments and speak to them about their experiences of administering it and see what people think. We were talking about doing a tree survey in September, so at some point we do need to start talking about that again. I don't know if people want to start thinking about that at the next meeting.
Okay.
And then the meeting after that, I'm not here. So we could have Matt give an intro to the town plan process.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
That sounds great. I'm not sure if I'll be here for that one yet or not. I may be able to log in from like 7 to 8, but I have my own board meeting up in Swanton or
On the
Salem
21st?
that day. Yeah.
I should be good on the 21st.
Okay.
And so it doesn't sound like we'd be making a lot of decisions that date if we're mostly focused on the town plan.
Yeah, we should probably this won't take very long, but also you guys could also elect the chair and vice chair for next year if you want to.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Was that-
Sorry, I will be out of town on the 21st in Maine. I do have internet access there, so I could attend virtually.
Anyone else know if they will not be here or able to attend anyway on the 21st of June?
I should be here.
Be able to. Yeah. So I'll just add that maybe somewhere in there, we should talk about the Glacier project, the final recommendation from the committee will be done, in a couple of weeks. I mean, we're going to finalize a lot of it tonight and then probably look over the final next Thursday night.
So would the June 7th meeting be too soon for that?
I guess by then, Simon, didn't you say the planning commission was going to look at on June 6th?
Oh, yeah.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if, hopefully I'll have a chance to go to that, but it'd be nice to understand what their response is to it as well. Maybe if on the 7th, if somebody, or I hope to go to it, but I don't know for sure.
Do we have room on that agenda for a Glacier update on June 7th?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it. I think we do need to do the Smoker Trail.
Yeah, that one needs to
That
happen.
needs to happen.
Okay.
Visual assessment could probably,
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
wait
fine.
on the other things.
Okay.
Smoker and Glazer on the 7th.
So just to be clear, what by update, what do we mean by that? Just this is what happened?
For the Glacier, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I think we could talk about what the committee came up with
Right.
and how it relates to the Conservation Commission, and then maybe even if I have a chance to go to that on the 6th, then we could get the response from the Planning Commission as well,
right.
if that's appropriate.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would like that. I think that sounds good. If it's allowable, I'm not sure if we need
Yeah.
to have
Unless
a representative
it's-
from the.
It
development.
should be, unless the conversation at the planning commission is in an executive session or something, it should be, certainly,
It won't be an
Open to
executive
the-
session.
it won't be, yeah, so that, yeah, definitely allowable.
Open.
It's gonna come before us formally in the future also, right? Like this would be just like an update to prepare you for when you eventually see this as the Conservation Commission. Do I understand that correctly?
Right, so June the 6th is where they talk about how it's going to be taken forward. At some point, the Conservation Commission does have to review this because it needs to go to the DRB.
Right.
So just, yeah. It's just staying current on it so that there's less to review when we need to do our official review.
Got it.
So I guess that'd be my suggestion then, to try and fit the Glacier parcel and the Schmoker Trail on the June 7th agenda. I gotta confess, I don't recall what we're gonna do with the tree survey, so I need a refresher on that.
Figure out how to run it,
Just do one. It's-
Okay.
schedule it, figure out.
So,
how
all
we-
right, so maybe we can talk about that there as well, and then push the
And
visual
just-
assessment back.
And this is maybe looking a little far in advance, but the first July meeting is the day after July 4th. And is that like, are you guys generally around?
I probably
So-
won't. I probably won't
Yeah,
be.
I was gonna suggest, Simon, maybe send out a poll to the commission members about like the next 3 meetings. Now we're getting in the summer vacation
Yeah.
schedules and all that.
See
And,
if we can figure out which ones we got quorums, which ones. we-
Right. yeah, and that June 21st one, yeah, I'll only be able to, may at best be able to attend from 7 to 8. So maybe we can see what folks' availability is looking like for the 21st of June, the 5th of July, and 19th of July. And then map out agendas around that. Okay,
I'll move, we adjourn.
Oh, I have one thing.
Oh.
So just before, just quickly, I would like to some point talk about trails. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one of our charges as a conservation commission.
Mhm.
And is Ann still hired as the trail? Okay, maybe get an update from her and, some of the trails are in need of some work. Mud Pond, especially along South Road. That's pretty rickety. I just saw last night that the Mud Pond west side has 3 huge culverts there. And it looks like they're gonna actually fix that drainage problem there. And they're gonna fill it in so people can park.
this is for the conservation area or the
Yeah,
country park?
no,
Conservation area.
no, the other side, the other one near the Schmoker. So the entrance that
Mhm.
goes in from that side. And people do use that. People park
Park
there
there,
fairly regularly. That's a mess. Ann did what she could with like limited
Mhm.
things there, but somebody could like probably,
Twist
twist
an
their
ankle.
ankle or something because it isn't the greatest. And it is muddy. But anyway, I think the town does have some funds set aside for trail work. I think we should look into that and ARPA funds. I think, I don't know where that is with the select board, but they we're going to put out, say that we have X amount of dollars for projects in town. And I think that might be something, that the committee should look to possibly.
I think that's a good idea. I have no idea what is available for ARPA funds or if the town would consider allocating some of the ARPA funds to trail maintenance, but that's one that goes, I think, within to the intent of ARPA funding
I think it was.
as well as infrastructure funding, but
Last I heard, it was like 1.8 million that was left in the ARPA funds for, and then it has to be spent by the 26th. Now, that was months ago that I heard that.
by 2026.
2026,
Yes.
I'm sorry, right?
Yep.
So we've got a little bit of time. Right, but it might go quick, if you don't
Yeah.
get in line.
Yeah.
I think it'll be gone, so. But anyway, just at some
Okay.
point this summer.
You can add that to the list, Simon. All right, we have a motion on the table to adjourn. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Whoever.
All right.
Gary
All in
Terry.
favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Hi.
All right, good night. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Good day.
Next
Thank
time.
you.
Later.
All right.
All right.
Thanks
Roll
for
it.
bringing that bread. I'm gonna.
Sure.